China, a place where the boundaries between nature and humanity are almost blurred. Mountains are not just mountains. Rocks are not just stationary. Everything is arranged in a way that makes you pause, even if only for a few fleeting seconds. There are cliffs that seem untouchable, yet still have pathways. There are spaces that seem abandoned, yet contain structures of incredible precision. Not ostentatious, not noisy. Today's journey will take you through such structures. Not long, but enough to make you slow down. Observe more closely and realize that sometimes the limits are not in the world, but in how we see it. There are places where the more you look, the less you understand how they were made. Not because they're complex, but because their scale is too large to believe. Yungang Grottoes begins with a sandstone cliff, roughly 1 kilometer long and up to 18 meters high, spread like a giant natural wall across the valley. More than 51,000 Buddha statues fill the interior. The largest reach, 17 meters high, the size of a 5-story building, carved directly from solid rock. The entire carved area covers approximately 18,000 square meters, with some individual caves approaching 1,000 square meters. Walls, ceilings, and columns are entirely consumed by carvings. And the entire work was completed primarily in the 5th and 6th centuries, over 1,500 years ago. Not all wonders reach for the sky. Fenghuang ancient town, established in 1704, occupies a core area of just 1.8 square kilometers, yet contains over 300 years of almost perfectly preserved history. The Tuojiang River runs through the town for about 1.2 to 1.5 kilometers, a short stretch on a map, but the backbone of the entire architecture. Hundreds of ancient stilt houses line both banks, their wooden pillars 2 to 4 meters high, driven straight into the water. From a distance, the buildings appear suspended in mid-air, like an unbroken brushstroke across the river. Inside, stone alleys barely 1 to 1.5 meters wide compress space and amplify sound. The Hongqiao Bridge, about 100 meters long, spans the river, and from its edge, a strip of ancient houses stretches for over a kilometer like a giant scroll painting. Over 200 ancient structures remain: houses, temples, defensive walls, layered so densely that simply standing still reveals dozens of tiled rooftops receding into depth. No single number here is enormous. But when 300 years of history, 200+ ancient structures, and a 1-kilometer strip of stilted architecture all coexist in 1.8 square kilometers, they create something that doesn't come. Not every wonder begins with grandeur. Sometimes, location itself is the most extraordinary thing. Furong town, nestled in Hunnan's mountains, is over 2,000 years old and clings directly to a cliff beside a waterfall roughly 60 meters high, like a curtain that never closes. From afar, the village stretches hundreds of meters along the cliff. Hundreds of ancient wooden houses from the Ming and Qing dynasties are stacked in layers 30 to 40 meters high, nearly the size of a 10-story building, yet resting entirely on natural rock instead of modern foundations. Inside, stone paths, barely 1 to 2 meters wide, wind through layers of buildings and hidden corners. In some spots, you stand just meters from the waterfall, close enough to feel the mist. From 50 meters above the base, instead of streets below, you see a colossal, constantly moving body of water. The contrast is what makes this place overwhelming. The waterfall carries immense force every minute, powerful, unstoppable. Right beside it, a small village has stood for thousands of years, almost unchanged. One side, perpetual motion. The other, quiet perseverance. Tongass is not only the largest national forest in the United States. Simply standing beside it is an extraordinary feat. There are places where you stand still and your heart still longs to fly. The Bailong Elevator, 326 meters tall, equivalent to over 100 floors, clings to the ancient sandstone cliffs in Zhangye National Park like a steel arrow piercing the Earth's spine. The elevator carries up to 150 people across its 3 double-decker cabins, ascending 326 meters in under a minute, a climb that would take 2 to 3 hours on foot. Inside the transparent glass cabin, you don't feel like you're in an elevator. You float among giant rock pillars as the valley slips silently below. Completed in 2002, it broke multiple records: the world's tallest outdoor elevator, fastest vertical elevator, and the only one anchored directly to a natural mountain pillar. Hundreds of tons of steel hold firm against storms and earthquakes, embedded in soft sandstone with both strength and precision. As the cabin ascends, sandstone pillars 200 to 300 meters high appear through the clouds, so surreal that many compare it to Avatar. But this is real. You breathe the wind, feel the mountain vibrate, and sense every tremor beneath your feet. The Bailong Elevator is not just transportation. It is a symbol of where nature and engineering become one. Imagine a place where height is no longer a number, but a sensation in every breath. Jade Dragon Snow Mountain spans 13 connected peaks like the spine of a giant white dragon. Its highest point, Shanzidu, rises 5,596 meters. The base sits at 2,400 meters. Surrounding that mountain is Denali National Park, a land so expansive that simply standing within it is enough for one to clearly feel their own smallness. At that altitude, oxygen drops to just 60% of sea level. Each step slows. Each breath becomes distinct. The Naxi people living at the foot believe the mountain is the embodiment of a protective deity. Its 13 peaks are seen as 13 swords of a god, erected to guard the land from unseen forces. At the mountain's base lies Blue Moon Valley, where meltwater from over 5,000 meters carries minerals that turn the stream a deep turquoise. In low-lying areas near wetlands, moose appear with massive bodies, slow and composed, as if they have Standing there, listening to wind through millennia-old ice, you understand that this place is not only vast in size, but vast in the way it makes humans feel small. Amidst drifting clouds and near vertical cliffs, Tianmen Mountain is a natural marvel with proportions that feel almost dreamlike. At roughly 1,518 meters above sea level, the peak seems suspended in the sky. Just below lies Tianmen Cave, a natural rock arch 131.5 meters high and 57 meters wide. Even a 40-story building would fit within its frame. When clouds drift through, the entire space breathes, appearing and vanishing, making those who stand before it forget they are on the ground. To reach the summit, visitors take one of the world's longest cable cars, approximately 7,455 meters, with some sections dropping over 1,200 meters in elevation. The road to the base features 99 consecutive hairpin bends, each so sharp it seems impossible on such steep terrain. Sitka black-tailed deer move in and out of the patches of light in the deep woods. Looking up, you see no destination, only a straight line disappearing into the void. Along the cliff face, a glass walkway just over 1 meter wide overlooks a drop of hundreds of meters, where the forest below fades to a faint green blur. Here, every number is precise, yet the feeling transcends all measurement. There are places that don't fit on the map of ordinary emotions, and Fanjingshan is one of them. Rising 2,570 meters, it stands like an almost 3 times taller Landmark 81, lifting straight into the sky. What makes Fanjingshan remarkable isn't its height, but its 65 million years of isolation. Over 3,700 plant species and thousands of animals thrive here as if separated from the planet's flow. Each living thing a trace of an era that existed long before humans appeared. Amidst that ancient space, Hongyun Golden Summit rises as a paradox, a rock formation over 100 meters high, split into 2 halves, each supporting a small temple, tiny enough to be a speck at sea level. yet standing firm where wind tears apart even sound. To reach it, one must climb over 8,000 steps. Each step slows. Each breath grows heavier. Each thought becomes clearer. Fanjingshan doesn't display its beauty easily. When you finally look down at the sea of clouds covering every path below, the feeling isn't conquest, it's of being lost in a space where time almost loses its meaning. It is the ocean and the life within it that make this place uniquely. Zhangye Danxia in Gansu province is a living geological museum spanning hundreds of square kilometers, where time is carved into every slab of rock. Between 24 and 100 million years ago, ancient rivers deposited mineral-rich sediments, iron, copper, manganese, layer by layer across this basin. Over millions of years, these layers compressed into sandstone tens of meters thick. When the Himalayas rose from colliding tectonic plates, the entire Zhangye region was uplifted, exposing a giant geological painting once buried underground. Wind and rain then carved the exposed rock into soft, wave-like formations. Some cliffs reach 300 meters, equivalent to a 70-story building. Layers of red, yellow, orange, and brown stretch across the landscape like a rainbow frozen into the earth. At sunrise or sunset, light strikes the rock obliquely, making colors so vivid each formation seems alive. UNESCO recognized Zhangye Danxia as a World Natural Heritage Site for both its rare beauty and scientific value. Kodiak is world-renowned for the Kodiak bear, one of the largest bear species on the planet. Imagine a road that doesn't follow the ground, doesn't hug the mountainside, but hangs in mid-air. Below is a chasm so deep that all sense of distance disappears. That is the Beipanjiang Bridge. At 565 meters above the valley floor, it surpasses the 541-meter One World Trade Center. Standing on the bridge, you're higher than the roof of an iconic skyscraper, with a drop below equivalent to over 180 floors. The total length is 1,341 meters. Its main span, 720 meters, stretches between two cliffs with no central pillars, no supports. Only cables hold the entire structure. From a distance, it looks like a thin thread suspended between clouds, yet it carries thousands of vehicles daily with stability and precision. Before this bridge existed, the canyon below separated communities by hours of travel. Now it takes minutes. A space that once divided everything has become a straight path across the sky. There are places where time seems to stand still. Lijiang ancient town spans 145.6 hectares at an altitude of 2,400 meters. Cool, clear air, like breathing through the mountains themselves. Having existed for over 1,000 years, Lijiang has preserved its original structure like an unwrinkled ancient silk cloth. Beneath every cobblestone street, a stream flows for over 10 kilometers, winding like a giant blood vessel nourishing the entire city. Viewed from above, Lijiang resembles a vibrant ink painting, each alley revealing a unique space, each turn deepening the sense of endlessness. Unusually, the city has no walls. It opens completely to nature and the distant mountain peaks. That openness is precisely what allowed Lijiang to endure across the centuries, a rare paradox in ancient architecture. UNESCO recognized Lijiang as a World Heritage Site, not for its size, but because it remains a living testament to ancient wisdom. A city that doesn't need to be modern, yet still functions perfectly to its own rhythm. They sent signals using smoke by day, fire by night. One smoke column meant 100 enemy soldiers. 3 columns meant more than 1,000. Dongchuan Red Land doesn't just display color on its surface. It permeates every layer of soil, every hillside. Located on the northeastern plateau of Kunming, at altitudes ranging from 1,800 to over 2,600 meters, this landscape is the result of millions of years of weathering on iron oxide-rich terraced rice fields, constantly changing with the seasons, layer in red, yellow, and green, a living painting that never repeats itself. Seen from above, the entire area unfolds like a giant tapestry woven from earth and light, vast stretches of color undulating like frozen waves. At dawn or dusk, the reds intensify almost to luminescence, while other shades create powerful depth and contrast. In Dongchuan, you don't just see colors. You feel the rhythm of the earth, the seasons, and time. The scenery shifts with every passing moment of light, and you will never see the same picture twice. Located in the heart of Shenzhen, a city born of speed and ambition, the Ping An Finance Center stands like a steel arrow at 599.1 meters, nearly twice the Eiffel Tower and 6 times the Statue of Liberty stacked. At its base, it appears as a thin, shimmering glass strip. I sat by the canal at 6 in the morning before the tourists arrived. With 115 above-ground floors and over 460,000 square meters of space, it functions as a vertical city. Tens of thousands of people living, moving, and working in a compressed, vertical world. The glass exterior transforms throughout the day. By morning, it blends into pale blue sky, barely distinguishable from clouds. At night, it becomes a brilliant white pillar of light, a lighthouse in a sea of concrete. From that altitude, a paradox becomes clear. The higher you climb, the more of the world you see, yet the smaller you feel. Ping An Finance Center is not just a place to touch the clouds. The Tibetan people who live in the surrounding area do not call these 4 peaks. They call them Not all heights are measured in meters. There are mountain peaks where, even from a distance, You feel their weight pressing down on the space, making the sky seem lower and people smaller. Meili Snow Mountain is one such place. The range stretches over 200 kilometers, with 13 peaks exceeding 6,000 meters, each like stacking nearly 2,000-story buildings. Above all, Kawagabo rises to 6,740 meters, taller than any man-made structure ever built. But what makes this place different isn't in those numbers. In a world where humans have reached almost every peak, Kawagabo stands untouched. No footprints. No flags. And then I stood in front of it in real life. The colors were even more stunning than the photo. Below, glaciers stretch for tens of kilometers, from thousands of meters down into green forests. In just a few kilometers, temperature drops from 20 degrees Celsius to below zero, as if you've traveled through multiple seasons in a single day. Meili Snow Mountain is not a place to conquer. It's a place that makes people stop. And when you look up at Kawagabo, you understand. Some heights don't exist to be surpassed. They exist to remind humanity that some limits remain. Not every road leads somewhere that leaves you speechless. Yubeng Village is an exception. It doesn't appear immediately, but emerges gradually after hours on steep slopes hundreds of meters high, as if you're stepping into a hidden world behind colossal mountains. The village sits at nearly 3,000 meters, where space feels more vertical than horizontal. Above it, Kawagabo, at 6,740 meters, looms almost 8 times higher than landmark 81, pressing the sky down, making everything beneath seem small. From Yubeng, the journey to the sacred lake continues upward to over 3,800 meters, where a turquoise lake lies surrounded by ice dozens of meters thick. The silence is so complete that every sound fades and slows. To arrive here, you must hike or ride a horse for 4 to 6 hours on narrow mountain paths barely wide enough for one person. This remoteness keeps Yubeng almost entirely isolated, making each step not just travel, but a deeper immersion into untouched space. When the first rays of sunlight touch the snow-capped peaks thousands of meters above, the entire landscape ignites in golden light. It's a moment so powerful that you forget the distance you've traveled. Hidden within the curves of the Longji rice terraces is not just land and water, it is memory. The Zhuang and Yao people pass down a legend. This place was once barren, rocky mountain. Rice couldn't grow. Water couldn't be retained. So instead of fighting the land, people worked with it, cutting mountains into layers, each terrace holding a little water, preserving a part of life. For hundreds of years, this work continued without blueprints or measuring tools, each terrace hugging the mountainside with near absolute precision. One generation began, the next continued. "700 years stacked by sweat and time." Water from the mountaintop flows down through each terrace continuously, a natural irrigation system stretching tens of kilometers, functioning as a single, unified body. Each planting season opens with simple rituals. No noise, no ceremony. Just brief offerings to the earth and water, a belief that each grain grows not only through nature, but through human respect. Longji is not just terraced fields. It is a story written across centuries, by the landscape, preserved by the people, and continuing every day. Imagine standing somewhere the cold doesn't just touch your skin, it fills the entire space. Temperatures drop below -30 degrees Celsius. Every movement slows. Your breath turns to white smoke the moment it leaves your lips. The Chinese have a saying, "Above is heaven, below are Suzhou and Hangzhou." What began as a small ice lantern festival in 1963 grew, after revival in 1985, into the world's largest Harbin Ice and Snow Festival. About 2.5 square miles in area, 9 miles in circumference, surrounded by rolling green hills. Blocks weighing 250 to 300 kilograms each are cut and hauled up daily, thousands of them, arranged like giant crystal bricks. What most visitors don't notice, no cement or glue holds the structures together. Water is poured between the blocks, and within minutes, sub-zero temperatures freeze it into a bond as strong as rock, allowing towers of 40 to 50 meters to stand firm. Local people say each block carries the age of the river it came from. This city isn't just built, it's unearthed from nature. And because it will disappear, the moment of standing there becomes more memorable than anywhere else. On the Qinghai Plateau, over 3,000 meters above sea level, where every breath is clearly audible, the lake opens up across more than 50 square kilometers, roughly 4 times the size of downtown Manhattan. It stretches 25 kilometers long, 2 kilometers wide, enough for the horizon to vanish completely. At 20 meters deep, it isn't extreme, but imagine a 6-story building submerged without a trace. Everything here is understated, yet enough to make nature's power undeniable. What slows all logic is the color. Not simply blue, a deep, melted emerald blue. In the morning, pale and transparent, like a sheet of glass placed in nature. At sunset, it transforms into deep purplish blue. Each season changes everything: emerald, sapphire, mineral yellow. a dance of light no artificial stage can replicate. Standing there, 50 square kilometers, 25 kilometers in length, 3,000 meters in altitude, these numbers dissolve. They stop being data and become a feeling, small, specific, and impossible to explain. There are structures that don't stand still. They seem to breathe. The Beijing National Stadium doesn't look like a stadium. It looks like a living, interwoven mass of steel, overlapping like a magnified bird's nest. Stretching 330 meters long and 220 meters wide, it covers a surface large enough to hold dozens of aircraft. Built from approximately 42,000 tons of steel, enough to build 6 Eiffel Towers, none of the steel stands straight. Every beam is bent, twisted, and interwoven, creating a network that appears chaotic, yet holds precisely. Inside, a space opens deep and wide enough for 80,000 people, the population of a small city, gathered in one place. At night, light filters through the steel gaps and illuminates the entire structure from within, like a colossal entity awakening in the middle of the city. Once the center of the 2008 Olympics, it still stands today, silent, massive, powerful enough to make anyone pause and realize that some structures are not merely built, but born to exceed the limits of human perception. There are places that don't need height or concrete to overwhelm. Just a body of water, stretching over 42 kilometers, 8 kilometers wide, covering 250 square kilometers, enough space to hold nearly 35,000 football fields without a single gap. Erhai Lake rests at 1,972 meters above sea level. Its average depth is 10 meters. Its deepest point reaches nearly 21 meters. Fed by streams from the Tianmen Mountains, its freshwater cycles quietly and persistently through the Shire River. Elongated like an earlobe, its name means ear-shaped sea. The lake, seen from above, resembles a giant silk ribbon stretched across the plateau. Soft, yet encompassing the entire space. Around its shores, the ancient city of Dali and white-walled Bai villages with grey tiled roofs. Set against 250 square kilometers of open water, these settlements appear as specks of dust, yet the contrast makes the space clearer. Nature stretches almost endlessly on one side, quiet, modest human traces on the other. On clear days, the view extends for tens of kilometers. So far, the distance stops being a number and becomes a layer of air. If there's one place that can overwhelm your senses in seconds, it's the Harbin Opera House. Against the endless white of Heilongjiang, this structure spans 72,000 square meters, the equivalent of roughly 10 standard football fields, and rises 40 meters, equal to a 13-story building. Yet you almost don't perceive the height, because every edge is softened by curves. No sharp lines. No clear boundaries. Everything flows like a glacier frozen mid-motion. From a distance, the entire structure resembles a ribbon, hundreds of meters long, winding across the ground. People standing beside it become tiny dots moving across its smooth white surface. Throughout the day, the facade shifts. In the morning, a snowdrift. In the afternoon, cold metal. At sunset, a crystal glowing from within. Inside, the main auditorium holds 1,600 seats beneath a 22-meter-high ceiling, high enough for a mature tree with room to spare. The interior is lined with continuously curved wood, as if you're standing inside the body of a creature sculpted from the forest itself. Most remarkably, this structure doesn't seem to stand on the ground. It blends into it, not built amidst nature, but lifted from the icy terrain itself. If the Earth ever took its deepest breath, it would probably be here. Pudacuo National Park spans over 1,300 square kilometers, an area large enough to swallow an entire familiar world. At over 3,500 meters altitude, where air thins like silk stretched between land and sky, every movement slows, and each step touches a deeper layer of space. The primeval forests are not just tall, but dense, so dense that light must filter through multiple layers before reaching the ground. trees rise like ancient pillars, carrying centuries of memory that concrete can never possess. Lake Beta unfolds across more than 159 hectares, so still that the sky reflects itself without distortion. Clouds drift not above your head, but beneath your feet. Across the Militang grasslands, small herds of yaks move like accidental brushstrokes, reminding you that vastness doesn't need to be ostentatious. It simply needs to be large enough to make everything around it feel small. There are lands in China beyond sight, beyond the boundaries of familiarity. You don't go there to explore. You go there and realize you've never truly understood what vastness is. The mountains are not only high, they stretch endlessly. The structures are not only large, they make everything around them seem so small it almost disappears. And in the moment you try to define what you see, you yourself become the most indefinable thing. No sound is loud enough to describe it. No number precise enough to measure it. Only one feeling spreading slowly but deeply. This world is much more than anything you've ever seen. And then you understand that the greatest places aren't the famous ones, but those that change your perspective on everything, even when you're completely unprepared. If you want to step into spaces like these, where every frame is a boundary broken, subscribe to the channel right now. Because the journey ahead isn't for those who just skim through, but for those curious enough to go beyond what they once believed to be the limit.